All right, here we go. Late night happy hour, a lawn sporter. Back. Judge Dan is here. Cofield. We got a bunch of stuff to get into, mostly NFL, and some of it reacting to what went on today and the last couple of days with Dan Snyder's football team, his former Redskins, his current Commanders, and then the commish reaction stuff coming up in just a little bit. But there was some Raiders Broncos news. Now, first of all, Dan gave us his take on the whole Josh McDaniels thing. That was kind of interesting. And, that's what, 10, 12 years ago. So, okay. Josh McDaniels has grown as a coach. So, not all the stuff that happened
No,
with the Broncos is
well,
going to,
I'm
not all the
not.
stuff that happened with the Broncos is going to happen here because he's not going to be in charge of the draft and he's more mature. It's going to change.
Well, actually, his drafting wasn't bad. That wasn't his problem in Denver. His drafting was actually pretty good outside of Tebow. Actually, even Tebow, they did pretty good job, right? Um, they won a game with Tebow,
They made it work as they made it work as well as they could. It was a
but
terrible
they had,
selection, but
yeah, but they actually they had some decent draft picks out of I think maybe Demarius Thomas.
Marius
So they
Thomas
actually
for sure.
yeah
Yeah.
they actually had some guys hit out of those Josh McDaniels drafts. It was just he was an absolutely horrific people person. And so at that press conference, whenever he was hired a couple weeks ago, well, I know better now not to be an absolute raging prick to people. Like I've learned now that that's not a good thing to be. What's funny was it reminded me of when during the Clinton scandal, they were trying to take down Bill Clinton for cheating. And remember the guy from Hustler magazine? He just died recently, Larry Flint. He says, you know what? Oh, okay, that's great. So he says, I'll give $1 million to anybody that can uncover dirt on members of Congress. And so all these cheating scandals came out on members of Congress, and they were like, oh, those were youthful indiscretions because these dudes are like 80 now, but they were only like 39 when they were cheating on their wives back then. And like, oh, youthful indiscretions. Dude, you're in your mid to late 30s, right? And so the same thing with McDaniels. He was only, 35 years old or 38 years old when he was a complete jerk to people. Oh, you're not old enough to know not to be a jerk. So yeah, I wasn't buying that. I think we said that last week when you knew better then, you know better now. I, I didn't particularly see it to be a particularly heartfelt answer. I think, okay, what do I say next time I get hired? Let me read this. I know better now. I failed last time. I was a jerk to people. Don't be a jerk to people because now I will be better head coach. Now, better head coach now, not jerk to people. That's the script.
That's the definition of not genuine. If that's the way he sounded, I don't think he sounded exactly like that. But
No, but I mean, it was,
it
come on.
doesn't matter because we'll find out quickly. How he deals with running an organization, drafting. He's going to have to deal with the highs and lows of team reaction to guys being moved in and out of the organization. So there are a lot of challenges coming up for Patriot Way West.
Well, here's clue number one, your new special teams coordinator. So you go to the worst team in the division, last place in the division, the Denver Broncos. And I can tell you one of the maddening, frustrating things we had this out here in Denver was Tom McMahon, a special teams coach. For years, this guy, you're just pulling your hair out like, God, this guy's unit, what he's responsible for, just boneheaded blunders week after week, costing games. Like couldn't get, Fangio, of course, couldn't figure game strategies out. You would think after 40 years in the league, you would just pick up on some things, right? Fangio couldn't figure anything out. Well, okay, McMahon's been around forever. You'd think on the special team side of things, you would figure some of that stuff out. Help him. You'd help him, Tom. Help Mr. Fangio out. He couldn't figure things out either. They're making boneheaded decisions. His players, of course, on the special team side, they're making all sorts of blunders. It was almost, not to exaggerate, almost on a weekly basis for at least 2 years. I think he was here for at least 2 years. And when they brought him back, we couldn't believe it. And then it was like mid-season, they're calling for this guy. because they were getting embarrassed. It was like, well, if you're going to make a change, just to at least placate the, to at least, if not fake it for the fans that you're interested in showing the fans something, so at least they'll show up and not, no show. Like they ended up no showing again by the end of the season.
Right.
Throw them something, give them something. Tom McMahon was the natural candidate. Nope, nothing. Every coach kept his job all season long for 2 years. And here you go, Josh McDaniels. That's your guy. That's your guy. So I don't know. Is the judgment better? Maybe.
Well,
Good luck. Good luck, Las Vegas.
they worked with each other the 1 year that McDaniels was in between Denver and New England in St. Louis, and this dude has been around the NFL for 15 years, much of it as the special teams coach, a little bit on the assistant special teams gig. He was at Utah State for about 10 years, and we'll see how he performs. But you do see more and more. Well, it's not more and more. It's still the same deal it's been for the longest time. Coaching isn't easy to break into unless you have ties, unless your family member is in coaching. And once you're in, unless you're just a complete and utter fuck up, coaches take care of coaches. There is a coaching fraternity, which I actually think is interesting. And I don't know that it's part of the coaching frat, but I think it's interesting that I'll say there's 2 African Americans who were hired, because I'm not going to sit here and have this whole discussion about Mike McDaniel and his blackness, the Dolphins coach. That's for other people to discuss. But it is fascinating that Lovie Smith got a job. The circumstances feel weird, but it is an African American coach who actually is getting a third chance. So in the smallest ways, like very incremental, it is kind of a breakthrough. Like, hey, look, now Lovey is part of the coaching fraternity. He's getting shot number 3.
Right. Well, so is it are black coaches being discriminated against because they're black, or is it if you're just not part of the club, you're not part of the club? Is that a defense
I
to
guess it's the club in general, and breaking through the glass ceiling to be part of the fraternity. I guess Lovey just got that done. I mean, there's so many weird cases. We'll see how all these coaches turn out. And the crazy thing for Lovey is then he's kind of getting attacked. He gets the job, and then Flores and his lawyers, it's really his lawyers, they write something kind of attacking Lovey, and I'm like, well, this isn't really helping your cause if you're going to attack the only guy who did get hired from the African American ranks. But when we're done with this whole thing, I mean, you see Roger Goodell is like, geez, without saying it, but he's like, this really hasn't accomplished what we thought it was going to accomplish. Good.
Well, the funny thing is, Lovie Smith is part of the class that they are suing on behalf of too, right? Like, because to explain to the viewers, the way the lawsuit was set up, they made this a class action lawsuit. One of the reasons they did that was to try and escape the arbitration clause of the NFL, right? Because if he was just suing, for example, the Dolphins, Mr. Flores was, well, hey man, your NFL contract has an arbitration clause, which it favors the NFL big time, right? But hey, if it's just but he doesn't have, for example, a contract with the Broncos, does he? Or the Giants right now, he doesn't, right? Nor do all the potential candidates that never got hired by an NFL team, in theory, right? So they sued on behalf of all the potential candidates that never got hired. Any candidate for any position over the last X amount of years that were within the statute of limitations, including Lovie Smith, right? So he's one of their potential litigants, right? So they're kind of smashing on him for getting a job. So yeah, it's weird. But going back to the McMahon thing, you can see the level of frustration. You're going to tell me that there's no younger, more dynamic coaches of color that could bring something to the table as opposed to this retread guy that's been a failure. Not only you could say, well, he's got qualifications, but he has not been performing. He was just literally fired for failure to perform from his last employer and immediately gets hired. This is a high profile, very high paying position, and he gets snapped up immediately And there are other younger, possibly more dynamic, more innovative type coaches that just don't even get a look because I guess they don't know the guy, right? So that would be the source of frustration.
So actually a good comment, and I was trying to research it real quick about on Lovey. He did go, I think, 17-39 at Illinois. In between Illinois and the Bears, he coached the Bucks. He wasn't very good there. I think he was 8-24. But this is interesting. How many coaches that went to a Super Bowl had to go back to college to revitalize their career? I'll look. Maybe it's some of the Saban rehab guys. I mean, there have been a bunch of guys who've gone to Nick Saban in Alabama to figure things out, or at least to repair their image.
Well, the glaring one is Caldwell, Jim Caldwell, right? So
crazy. Why? Like as I said last week, or maybe the week before, I'd love to see Jim Caldwell and Marvin Lewis, because Marvin Lewis never made a Super Bowl, but he was a winning coach in Cincinnati. They never won playoff games. But Marvin Lewis had to go back to, had to go to Arizona State to coach. And I mean, the thing is, it's all ends of the spectrum, because Jim Caldwell's 67 years old. You take out the 2-14 year when, Peyton Manning's neck was all screwed up. The guy does have a good record in the NFL. He actually won in Detroit, which is freaking amazing. And then on the other end, Byron Leftwich, Eric Bieniemy. I'll go a little bit older. Todd Bowles, I guess, would be the older end. But Leftwich, Bieniemy, and who the hell was I just thinking about? There's another young African-American coordinator who really didn't get many looks. I think Gerard Mayo is probably ready. He's a co-DC. Now he's probably going to be the DC with the Patriots. When the thing is, when you see so many teams around the league smitten with young guys, and then out of nowhere, you see a Lovie Smith hired at 63 years old. It's just, I don't know. It's
right,
weird.
well, yeah, and then so for example, Leftwich, what I heard was he had the job, but they told him you don't get to pick your staff. We're going to pick guys for you. But
he also, Dan, you should know, he lobbied to get his own GM, and the GM there is like, whoa, okay.
Leftwich,
Leftwich wanted his own GM. Adrian Wilson, who's working in the Cardinals organization, he wanted him as a GM, which, I mean, if you don't want to work with that GM, I don't blame. I mean, there's not a lot of people who are on Trent Baalke's side, so I think Baalke actually pulled off a bit of a miracle getting Doug Peterson. So
then that's on him. That's actually, just side note, that's what happened with Mike Shanahan, but which is actually why Mike Shanahan doesn't work anymore. But when Mike Shanahan went to Washington, they said, "Hey, coach, we love you." You remember Bruce Allen was there, and Bruce Allen says, "We love you, coach. We want you to be our guy." And he says, "Yeah, that's all great, but you're not my boss. I'm your boss." What? Yeah. I'm your boss now. And they hired him. But then little did he know, that ain't going to fly. They may tell you that, but Dan Snyder's going to Dan Snyder, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And so it didn't work out the way Shanahan, quite like Shanahan thought, because Mike Shanahan, a tyrant in his own right. And of course, that didn't work out. That was a mess. And it really ended effectively. Mike Shanahan, who's a tremendous X's and O's coach, it ended his career. He can't get work. Well, he's getting up there, but he would still like to be coaching, in my opinion. May not be a fact, but I'm guessing. But nobody now wants to work with Mike Shanahan either, because of his reputation for being, power hungry, thirsty, lust, that lust for power. He's out now for doing things like that.
So I'm going to float something ridiculous by you from a legal standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So the NFL, Goodell was talking about international games again today.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be playing a game in Germany. And someone, a Raiders fan on Twitter, said, "Let me guess, it's going to be a Raiders home game." Can I tell you, as a taxpayer in the state of Nevada, we just forked over $750 million. I don't want to hear this bullshit about it's a tax on people from outside the market.
It is. I take offense to you. I take offense every time I go in there.
I take offense to this notion that the money couldn't be spent anywhere else. It could. We need light rail. We need to decide what we're doing with the monorail. As we're going to see, I think the Elon Musk boring thing is complete bullshit. Public transit here is terrible. The roads around the strip are terrible. Our sales tax got raised because of the money from that hotel tax rate from the tourists, not enough of it goes to the police, so we have to raise the sales tax to cover shortfalls with Metro. So anyway, I've done this rant a million times. We paid $750 million into the stadium. We're going to have to pay probably another $500 million, Dan, to fix the roads around the stadium. For me as a taxpayer of Nevada, fuck you, NFL. They're playing every home game they're supposed to. They're not doing Mexico, the UK, or Germany. Now, could taxpayers, if they found out that we were losing a home game in our, half publicly funded stadium, could taxpayers actually do something and file suit against the NFL?
No.
What?
No.
We want to fight this.
You will not fight it. You will take what you get, and you won't throw a fit. Period. By the way, did you also get a Super Bowl? Are you going to cry about getting a? Well, actually, wasn't Adam Hill crying about getting a Super Bowl? He was, wasn't he?
There are a lot of people who, when they crunch the numbers for the Super Bowl, will argue that the city potentially loses money.
Yeah, you guys, what a bunch of whiny, crying little brats. Oh, I'm crying. I lose a home game. I'm crying when I get a Super Bowl. Stuck a sock in it.
You got to pick a side. How valuable are these games?
Right. Yeah, but no, I would say I don't know what grounds you're going to sue on. You are part of the club, and to be a member, you go by the rules, and you're a member of the organization, the NFL, and they set the rules. They set the schedule. Period. And you're a part of the committees that set the rules each year in the off season, and you can comply, cry and complain. And Mark Davis has as much sway as he can influence, as he can gather each year. For years and years, Al Davis had little because he sued the NFL and, won one time and then lost everyone after that. But the NFL didn't like him. So, but they were cautious because they didn't want to get sued again, although they did. They always fought, right? But I think Mark Davis now is trying, I think he takes a much different approach, obviously, than Al Davis did. He tries to be much more, I don't think I think he tries to get along better than Al Davis. I don't think he's,
he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with the way Gruden was handled. He kind of, set it by not saying anything, go ask the league.
Right. But, he's free to develop influence in any way he can to try and sway owners when they make rules. But no, he's not going to. Now, as Watkins will tell you, you can sue anytime you want to stick a stamp on something and file it in the court, but you're not going to win, right? And here's the other thing. Okay, you sue, and are you going to win? Because here's another thing Watkins always argue about, because how often does something go all the way through the litigation process? Okay, that's one thing. Like the Flores thing is no way it's going all the way through trial. Well, how likely are you then to get a favorable result if you just file the darn thing? Here, 0%. Even if you file it, you're not getting anything.
All right, how about this idea? I'm going to tie this to Dan Snyder and his Commanders. The NFL does
great name, by the way, Cofield. What'd you think of the name?
Oh, it's a home run. I can't wait to get the gear. It's great. All that time, and they come up with this name. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and scream and yell about it. But if I were a fan of the team, I would not be that fired up. If they do, apparently there's now multiple investigations again that the football team will have to go through. The Commanders will have to go through. Say the NFL actually finds something and they have some teeth. Could the NFL, instead of, because they find guys, they find the owners, the organizations. It's like, who cares? How much can you fine him that it makes a freaking dent when the guy's a billionaire? What if the penalty were, I just mentioned the international games. What if they said, you know what? The next 2 years, you're playing 3 of the international games and losing 3 home games. The next year after that, you're playing 2 international games and you're losing those 2 home games. Wouldn't that be a real penalty? And then what would the football team do?
Well, the thing is, yes, it would be a real penalty. What you got to remember, though, is what these owners. First off, my understanding is behind the scenes, they're trying to find a way to get him out. They're trying to find a way to get rid of Snyder. but they're trying to be diplomatic about it. I heard somebody today saying, yeah, they tried to find a way to saddle him with so much debt that maybe he'll have to sell. But they have no, they're spineless about it. They just don't have the backbone to force him out. I don't know if he has, what's the old term? He's got pictures on somebody or on so many of these guys that they're just afraid to do it. We still don't have an answer. The Gruden stuff came from a lawsuit in which he was involved. It came from a law that evidence. Everybody assumed that the league was leaking it. It came from a discovery process from which a lawsuit in which Dan Snyder was involved in.
Yep.
Tell me, come on, man. So, but NFL owners are always hesitant to punish one of their own because they don't want to be next, right? So they don't always want to drop the hammer. And really think about it in the history of sports. I can think of Donald Sterling. Yes, they dropped the hammer on that guy with the quickness. The who was the Panthers guy, I guess. Even that was a little bit surprising, right?
Well, I mean, compare the stories we hear, and we haven't really seen any results of an investigation, but the stories we hear about years of an abusive workplace that Dan Snyder oversaw sound much worse than the stuff that Jerry Richardson did. Much worse.
Right.
So how did they get that done that easily? I mean, I think Richardson was ready to cash in or cash out, whatever.
Yeah.
So he was cooperative, but it sounds like Snyder's environment was horrendous. And Jerry Richardson made some comments, about the way women were dressed at work. Right. I mean, it sounds like Snyder really was a predator.
Well, so I haven't paid enough attention to see. I thought a lot of it was workplace environment, and then I heard today somebody said is saying she was assaulted or harassed by him. So you tell me how much of it was him.
I think he was witness to different things, and kind of laughed it off. There was a story of him after some event, basically trying to. I'm not saying he was like violently pushing, but kind of pushing a woman in the direction of his limo, and one of his advisors was like, Dan, this is not a good idea. How to step in basically to save Snyder from himself and save the woman. But we really haven't seen all the stories either. We're talking about dozens of women, and then there's the cheerleader stuff where, they're filming them naked. They're trying to freaking distribute that. It was just behavior in the office. We had a woman last week on the HBO podcast is talking about, players walking up to her, just dropping their pants and go ahead. And then, she's like, no. And then he just moves on like it's nothing. And like people in the office are like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing here.
Hey, man, what are you talking about, Glass House, Steve Cofield? That's what the Flores lawsuit said. It was well known throughout league circles what a pig John Gruden was, what a racist pig he was, and you guys hired him. You guys didn't care. So don't cry me a river about, all of a sudden you just found out? We had no idea about these emails. They were everywhere.
Right, but that action was swift. He's done. He's done.
But you knew going in. Don't play babe in the woods, Mark Davis and Steve Cofield. You guys knew for 10 years. You had to have known what a jerk pig racist this guy was.
Sure.
Just out of the blue, all of a sudden, we had no idea this guy was a jerk,
yes,
a racist, and a pig.
I know.
Cofield, you're on the inside. I just saw. You know what I saw?
Yeah.
You know what I just saw on Facebook today? Adam Leonard is suggestion. Two mutual friends, Adam Hill and Steve Cofield. You know all these guys. You're hanging out because Adam Leonard's your Facebook friend. So I know you're hanging out at parties with all these guys.
What you're talking about.
You're
just making shit up now.
You and Mark Davis and everybody in the NFL knew Gruden was a racist, misogynist, pig, and that's what the lawsuit, seriously though, in all seriousness, to bring it back around, that's what the lawsuit says. The Flores lawsuit says for 10 years he was a candidate for dang near every single head coaching job that came open, and was widely known. It was out in the open that he was a racist pig, and Raiders hired him. Raiders hired him. They had no problem. Come on in.
Here's a new hashtag. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. Me too. Cofield knew.
I
Me
know,
too. Cofield knew.
I'm getting roped into this. I had no idea. I wasn't.
You had no idea. You're Facebook friends with Adam Leonard, for Christ's sake. Come on.
We aside from this foolishness, we like having attorneys on because when cases come up like this, I see sports radio people say stupid shit, and it's like, will you just speak to an attorney, please? And one of your NFL reporters in Denver went on the freaking attack on Florio and I keep calling him Flores's claims about the Broncos brass being disheveled. They may have been hungover. They were unprofessional, and obviously he said they showed up late. And your guy Albright was on Twitter in the middle of the week, and he's like, "Well, that's a lie. That's a lie." And they could sue for defamation. And I immediately texted or tweeted you, and I was like, John Elway is going to sue for defamation because someone said they were unprofessional and they looked disheveled. What the fuck is in that suit?
Well,
I look disheveled every day. I mean, like you look the way you. I mean, I know it's a matter of opinion, but what are you going to take pictures and then we're going to judge if you look disheveled or professional?
Well, I was saying you showed up to a job interview, as an employer, you showed up like madmen, hungover, late and an hour late and hungover to a professional interview. And I mean, that's the type of thing that is devastating to your reputation, if true.
If you still have a good reputation.
Right. And so, for example, if you are trying to go for ownership in the new in the sale of the team, which John Elway is, it could be the last straw. I mean, I actually think it probably is.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting angle. So if he's not involved in the next ownership group, could he go after Flores and say, you damaged my chances? How do you prove that?
Well, I think the issue is this is could be the last straw for John Elway, because behind the scenes, he does have a reputation. I mean, part of the reputation is, though, they screwed up. For example, I go back to the game where they had to play without a quarterback, right? The Drew Lock game, or the game against the Saints, where because they had hid their COVID trackers in the four corners of the room so they could play footsie.
And then the NFL kind of admitted that it was actually punitive.
Yeah, right. So, but I was like, at the time, I was like, there's got to be something here, because if I'm John Elway, I throw a fit. I either forfeit the game. I stand up, I go in front of a microphone and say, I'm John Elway, damn it. I'm one of the best players in the history of this league. And if you don't give us, because they literally said, you can't even sign. They had a coach's son that was kind of like a quality assistant or something that had a minimal amount of playing ability, but knew the playbook, that they wouldn't even let him sign. They couldn't even sign him to play.
Right.
Like, they're like, no, you get nothing. And so I would have, if I were John Elway, I would have pitched a fit and said, okay, you want me to grab a microphone and embarrass the league? Because I'm willing to. I'll die on this hill. Elway didn't. He had no balls, right? Because he's a shell of himself. And so yes, you could say. Now here's the deal: Justin Watkins came on Cofield and Company that day and said you can't be sued for what's contained in a legal pleading. So he's not going to be sued for that. Now I can see why you would want to sue if it weren't true as to Elway. The Broncos have been very clear; they're denying everything as it relates to them in that lawsuit. We were on time. We hadn't been drinking because we were on a plane in the middle of the night. We weren't out drinking because we had interviewed Mike Munchak late and then had to get on a plane through the night. Didn't land until 2:30. We were on time for that meeting, bright and early at 7:30. The meeting time was set by the Patriots, and we were at the hotel. But here's the interesting thing. Their story kept evolving too. First they said, well, we were interviewing Zach Taylor in LA, and then it changed to we were interviewing Mike Munchak in Denver. Zach was the day before, and then it was, well, the meeting started at 7:30. It was the interview started at 7:30, and then it was like, well, it was a breakfast into a meeting interview. So, and then Albright also said, oh, there's proof, and they're going to release it because behind the scenes they were talking about they were going to release the proof.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it, Albright? Where is it?
Yep.
Still waiting to see it.
And as I've said, if the basic premise is here's what I think was unprofessional, and the overarching thought is they didn't take the interview seriously, I would start with they flew at 2:30 in the morning to go to an interview. Make different travel arrangements. Well, that you get to rest and you don't feel like shit going in.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing.
Show me that respect, then you're not coming in on freaking 4 hours sleep.
Well, their counter argument to that was, well, we didn't know that we were going to go long with Munchak. The Munchak interview went long. We apologize.
They went long.
Well, did they go long having cocktails? But here's it. Well, but seriously,
I would admit that. Like it's late at night. I have a problem. I have to drink. So sorry, we did our best and we weren't 100%.
Well, but seriously, on that front, if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Joe Ellis was not there. He was in New England. He wasn't there because his family's from New England. There was a personal issue. Of the 5, he wasn't there. So there's 4. Okay. One of them was Patrick Smythe, the PR guy. From what I know of him personally, what he represents, he was already up working out on the treadmill, talking to Joe Ellis by 6 a.m. So I don't think he was hammered out of his schnocker, right? The other guy was Matt Russell, who's well known. Did we talk about this last week? He had completed a work release sentence for hitting a cop.
Yeah, you said
after a DUI. So he claims anyway he's sober. So probably wasn't him. So there's only 2 people left. So really, it's only Elway and maybe this other person who I don't know who that kid is.
Right.
So they could, really, who could have walked in disheveled, right? And really, so Flores' claim were specifically, he said Elway and Ellis and others. Well, Ellis got up early and drove, and so he's really talking about Elway. But here was the interesting thing. When asked about proof on the media interviews, he didn't, like said last week, he didn't say, well, I smelled the odor of alcohol, this or that. He just said their state and the way they seem to engage.
Right.
So I don't know. He doesn't seem to have a lot of proof. The Broncos claim they do have proof, but they haven't produced it yet.
Back to Snyder. So we got the news that Snyder's hiring an independent investigative team led by some former assistant U.S. attorneys from the Palace Global Group. These are to look into the allegations made by Tiffany Johnston during her time with the team. Today, the NFL announced, well, we're going to have an investigation. I saw some reaction, cynical, saying, this is on Twitter, just, someone tweeting, let me save everyone some time, and I'll play this one out for you. Snyder hires firm to investigate latest allegations. NFL takes over the investigation. Handshakes occur and no paper trail exists. Nothing changes. Sound familiar? Now, you argued earlier that maybe the NFL getting involved here is the beginning of really trying to get to something and build a case to get rid of Snyder, or do you think this person is right, that this is the NFL just kind of from an appearance game, hey, let's come in, we'll say we did an investigation and we can quiet this whole thing down?
No, I didn't argue that. I argued that they were doing some other things to get rid of him. I don't think this investigation.
You don't think this is? Okay.
No. If they wanted this thing to come to light, they would simply say, Dan, NFL, we agree the findings of the original investigation are released. That's it. We will redact whatever information needs to be redacted to protect the names of. But the victims already have said, I think the majority of them, if not all of them, are the ones saying, release it. We want it to come to light, release it. they're trying to hide behind, well, two things. Well, without absence of an agreement on both sides, it can't be released. Well, then come to an agreement. You guys are the only ones. It's not the victims that cooperated, because right now the victims are saying, well, we already did this. We're not now gonna, we've already been duped once into one of your shams. We're not doing this again. So release the original investigation, because we're not going through this dog and pony show again. So if they're serious about it, just release it. Period. All Snyder and the NFL have to do is say, we're going to release the original investigation. I mean, this is dirty. This is just old school dirty stuff, and they just know they can get away with it because it'll just blow over. I mean, nobody's going to stop watching football based on this stuff.
No. Can they get away with it ultimately? I mean, last week this got stirred up again because there was a congressional hearing where they had some former team employees in front of them. I mean, what sort of power does the government have in terms of getting the information?
None. I mean, I think the Congress in the past had always threatened to take away, and I don't even know, I'd have to remember. They always had that antitrust exemption, and the NFL they may have already given it up.
They did.
Yeah. So, they always have the power of a subpoena and contempt of Congress and all that stuff. But you have your right to Fifth Amendment and this and that. And
I heard a congressman go on with one of our buddies. Did you ever work with, as they call him now, Chris Russell?
Yes,
I was Chris Russo.
Yeah, I was producer. You don't remember?
I don't remember shit. I don't know.
You Tierney and Cofield and the infamous bottle incident. Yes.
What was the bottle incident? What, with the board op?
I don't know what that is. No.
Oh.
So
what was the
you guys, it's hilarious, man. So
yeah, that's right.
You guys used to do just a react show on Saturdays and Sundays, and just a whip around of what was going on, games, this and that. And Tierney was a hothead. He was the young guy, was the hothead, and you said something. And he said, so he's mad. He's mad. So, Mandalay Bay has those little glass bottles of water, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so he picks up this glass bottle and he chucks it. And in Cofield fashion, you look at him like, and you guys are on mic. This is going on mic while you guys are still doing the show. And I'm a young guy, and so I'm just watching.
Crap. Yeah.
Well, I'm just observing, right? And I'm like, and so then the bottle comes back and just kind of, or maybe you just had one too. I think you just had one too. And so you just go like, you're a total, you just go, okay. And you just like a total jerk, just go, okay, I can do this too. And just kind of like laissez-faire, just flip one across the room too. Like, oh, I can do this too. So he's totally out of his mind, mad, throwing bottles. And then you're just like, oh, okay, fling.
Yep.
Like, what are you going to do? I was like, yes, sweet.
It is good to see a complete meltdown by one or both of the hosts to the point where they want to punch each other.
Yes, it was awesome. Well, you were like, I know you're not going to do anything.
Right.
So anyway.
Maybe that was early on because I saw him do stuff later in his on and off the air. So he can go at it if he wants to. But anyway,
I'm sure while you were running around, I'm sure.
The good old days.
Yes.
But yeah, Chris Russell does radio in DC. So he had a congressperson on who was actually involved in this hearing. And, Chris was calling for more action. And he asked the congressperson, hey, how is this similar to what you guys actually got done with the steroid scandal? Because the government stepping in actually did get things done. Eventually, MLB was so embarrassed that, they started putting in some testing and some thresholds and all that. And this congressperson argued that, these are cases where the government needs to step in. The NFL is not just some throwaway story. These are major stories. It represents a workplace. It represents a culture. So do you buy that there should be some government intervention to try to get some action going here?
Well, me personally, my politics.
I don't know if this is a political thing. I think it's basically spending resources of time and some money.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
What is really of the public concern?
Right. I mean, do I think it's in the public interest of do I think it'll be effective? One, do I think Congress right now is effective at anything? No, I don't think they are. Do I think doing a dog and pony show of dragging the NFL into them and embarrassing them will accomplish much? No, I think they'll come
Yeah,
in.
but this sounds like exactly the stuff that dissenters of the government getting involved in baseball steroid stuff. I heard this back then, but it
But
did.
it's a different climate now. I mean, it literally is. And
How
by the
so?
way,
How so?
well, because we're completely polarized. As a Congress is completely impotent now. Don't you realize that? Congress is completely impotent. We pass nothing. Okay, we pass nothing. They have no power. I mean, it'll be a miracle if we get a Supreme Court justice passed before the elections. I mean, Congress is completely impotent. So you know, even back then, I mean, to me, and just so you know, I now consider baseball to be a completely illegitimate sport. I mean, I call it professional wrestling. I actually had, I don't know if you guys remember Brad Lidge. He called into the show and goes,
Oh, really?
wait a minute, Dan. Wait a minute, Dan, before you just completely bury the sport, can I get a word in? He goes, the board op goes, he calls in, he goes, this is Brad Lidge. He goes, oh, you're calling yourself Brad Lidge? He goes, no, this is Brad Lidge.
Oh, wow.
And I go, you know what's funny, Brad, is when you actually played, you would never come on because I was a producer at the time, and my host always wanted to get him on because he's
Oh,
from
nice,
Colorado. I
nice.
said, so, but now you want to come on the show? Absolutely, the floor is
Oh, I
yours.
thought you were going to be like, you're banned. You're banned.
Yeah, I know you're banned. I said,
Get
the
out.
floor is yours. What would you like to say? Because my shtick is, you guys are professional wrestling. You're more sports entertainment than a legitimate sport. You have no integrity. You wasted all your records were sacred, holier than thou. They mean nothing. They're worthless. You mean nothing. You're a joke. You sold out. You juiced the players, the stadiums, the ball. Everything was juiced. It's fake. So they weren't effective. They're not effective. It's a clown show of a joke of a sport. So I don't know what Congress accomplished anyway. And the testing just expired. Yesterday? They don't even
Yep.
have policy now.
Yep. So work out as much as you can in the off season to get big before you get off the stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, to go back to your question? What would they accomplish? They would parade the NFL. Anytime Congress does anything now, they parade people in front of them. They yell at them, they embarrass them, and then they would go home and make their billions and laugh all the way to the bank.
So
You understand people right now are being charged with contempt of Congress. There's been a contempt of Congress referral sitting in the Department of Justice lap for 7 weeks, and they don't even know if they're going to prosecute that.
and what is that?
It's the Congress has said you didn't comply with a subpoena. That's for Mark Meadows,
Right.
and they don't even know if they're going to prosecute it. The department, because they say you have defied our subpoena. We want you charged, and their Department of Justice doesn't even know if they're going to bring charges on it or they're going to prosecute it.
It's crazy too, and I think it's what you're getting at. Steroids and numbers in baseball got people more worked up than the Snyder organization harassing and treating women like shit. They're like where are the people driving this cause for change, right? People got more worked up that Barry Bonds' head was gigantic and Mark McGwire was hitting 70 home runs than, your daughter or wife could actually be working in an environment like this, getting harassed left and right. And we're like, we can't do anything about it.
So they can have hearings, right? And in theory, but they're not going to, they have no ability to pass legislation at this point, right? Because the politics in this country are so polarized. So they can have hearings and they can embarrass people and they can call people before them. But what's that? Okay, it'll be embarrassing. And then they go home and they go on with their lives, period. But they're not going to pass legislation. So what does it matter? And they can subpoena people. Yes, great. That's it.
Related story to the nth degree. Tell me what this means. This came out yesterday. Trevor Bauer won't face criminal charges stemming from allegations of sexual assault, DA's office says. So what's happening here? Is this over?
Well, he still could face discipline by. Now I don't know. I don't know if they could. I don't know enough about their policy if they could cancel it because he was on a 2-year deal with his team. If he still did enough to violate his contract, but I think it's over. It seems to me, and I don't know, have enough information, so I got to be very careful here. It almost it sounds eerily similar to the Duke lacrosse case. So this woman had relations with him. He's from his perspective, he says it was admittedly rough but consensual. There were text messages. She got initially a restraining order, but what generally happens with restraining orders or protection orders is you get one initially, and then you go to a hearing to see if it should be extended. They had a 4-day hearing in this case, which is unusual. A lot of times they're 4 hours or less. They had a 4-day hearing, at which point, at the end of, the judge said, "No, we're not extending this. He's no longer a danger to you," and he didn't do anything beyond what you gave him permission to do, and you didn't consider the ramifications of you may have had some bad consequences, but that's kind of what you told him to do, type thing. And they looked at all the evidence and said, we can't move forward with this. And so they didn't comment any further. We'd have to make all sorts of inferences and guesses to for us to take it any further, but they decided they can't prove this case. And so he came out and did his, as a lawyer, ill-advised, but he said, I didn't do the horrible things she's saying I did. I didn't do that. We had rough sex. That's it. But all the things the horrific things she's saying I did, he's essentially saying we had rough consensual sex and then doctored everything afterwards, did all sorts of things in a money grab. That's essentially what she's saying. And I don't know if you can't go as far to say the prosecution believes him, but they're at least saying we don't have enough to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, and we're not even going to try, because prosecutors will try. They will if they think it's, depending on the prosecutor and how aggressive they are, and if they want, all sorts of prosecutors come in all shapes and sizes, and some like the headlines, some hate the headlines, and whoever these prosecutors are, they didn't want to touch it.
How about this one to close? This sort of, when I first read this, I was like, wait, is this just simply a rivalry spot? And the local authorities were like, hey, let's play into this. Mac Etienne, who's out for UCLA, he's a big man, apparently tried to spit at Arizona fans at the game just a couple of days ago. He was arrested and cited for assault. Quote, the intent to injure, provoke, or insult another person, said Sergeant Sean Shields. We allowed him to go back with the team to the locker room, and he was arrested for assault. When I read this, I'm like, okay, is this Arizona trying to stick it to UCLA?
The first thing that popped in my head, I was going to do a bad joke about, like when we did the shows at the beginning of COVID, like remember when Watkins was all fired up about faking the vaccination card? I was like, oh, Watkins have him arrested for some COVID related offense. Although I think all of our positions may have, at this point, evolved a little bit, but unless it was somehow related to that, because we're in a time, a infectious disease kind of little time now.
Right. And there were, and we know there were, multiple people arrested for doing, that kind of crap at a grocery store. And I guess I sound like a hypocrite because I was all behind, getting people when they acted like assholes.
Right.
So maybe I need to be consistent, but keep going.
Yeah. And unless it's involved with that, it would appear on its face, yes, to be kind of ridiculous.
Yes. What do you got coming up?
Well, first, before we get out of here, I thought
we do.
I tweeted out that you would be live on air doing your recipe for armadillo eggs for the Super Bowl? Or you're not going to do that?
I'm not going to do that now. I know.
Oh, did I have bad information? I'm sorry.
It was bad info. It was bad info. My the extent to which I will cook will be. I'm not cooking. No, I go to parties where people know how to cook.
Air fried armadillo eggs.
No.
You know what those are? They're like jalapeno poppers with
Yeah.
the fried sausage on the outside, and the you know. Okay.
I didn't say I didn't want them. I just can't cook them.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna. I had bad info. I'm sorry.
What are you doing for Super Bowl?
I think because I haven't cooked in a while. I do think I'm gonna do the Tim Tebow beef ribs, the beef plate ribs, some briskets, or brisket, probably briskets, and
Yeah.
then I have I call them adult baked beans. They've got they, they they're magic. So
Really?
yeah, they got a bunch of different types of beans and peppers and
Jesus.
sauces and things like that in there. They're pretty good.
Nice.
People seem to enjoy them.
You got any shows coming up?
Well, so what happens with me on the station is during the season I get bumped around a lot, but then when the season ends, it's kind of my time to shine, so to speak, for that 6-7 months period because I'm on really consistently all the time.
Nice.
So that's when I get a lot of run. So yeah, every Saturday, 11 to 2, and weed beans, and then which and then Sundays 10 every Sunday. We call it the easy like Sunday morning edition of the Dan Jacobs Show with Lionel Richie. 10 to 2 sometimes, or excuse me, 10 to noon, sometimes 10 to 1 on Sundays. You know what was crazy though? We couldn't figure out what alfalfa, it was escaping me and my partner, alfalfa sprouts. We couldn't for the life of us remember what those things were called at lunch. It took us 2 days to remember what they were. We finally Googled it and figured it out.
Why was that even a topic?
Oh, because there was this breakfast joint. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there was this breakfast joint that we loved. And then all of a sudden it changed and we went in there and it was like all of a sudden this frou-frou place and had avocado toast and like, this sprout things. We're trying to remember what the name of them were. And we just literally got up and walked out. As soon as we saw the avocado toast, we're like, what? We were all scared and we just got up and left, and so, but I was trying to think of the name of that sprout and he was like bean sprouts and it was, alfalfa sprouts.
So you posted something about Waffle House. That really was your first time going to Waffle House?
So I had gone one time in Kansas, like the 4th of July, the very first 4th of July when I moved to Kansas for law school.
Right.
We don't have them here. There's like 2.
Yeah, we don't. We don't have any.
Yeah. So no, yeah, I really and I don't really remember if you catch my drift the one time we went in Kansas.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, and so my daughter and I went. We talked about it on the show. It was a huge shock. Like everybody loved talking about Waffle House. It was
Of
great.
course.
And it was actually because people love to smash on the Waffle House.
Yep.
It was good. It was good stuff.
People, I mean, it's good late night eating. Like you said, generally you didn't say it, but generally it might be, after a night of drinking. I like it, so I try to get it anytime I'm in the Midwest or South where there's a location. But and we talk about it on Cofield and Company all the time. We freaking love it. But there's a couple of things that I got to follow up on. Well, first of all, it looks like you got a waffle with some chips on top, chocolate chips, right?
Well, that was my daughter got that.
It looks like you got some sort of egg sandwich
with sausage at the recommendation of
sausage. And then you got hash browns, which I've never seen them do the hash browns like I get them chunked and smothered and peppered or something like ham and jalapenos. You got it with the sausage gravy, and then you got biscuits and gravy.
Right.
Okay. I've never had their gravy there. Is it good?
Well, yeah, it was decent, and the biscuits were different than any I'd ever had. They were crispy. They were like, I don't know if they put them on the grill or whatever, but they were not like a fluffy biscuit. They had a little crunch to them. And now the only downside was, I was like, this is good. It's a little salty though. And then I took the salt shake because I'd salted it. I like, and then I took the salt shaker and I went, and it was just pouring out. It was one of those salt shakers that there was no filter on it. It was like, oh, well, that's why. So it was a little bit on the salty side.
You're quite the chef.
Yes.
There is the waffle. The other argument we've had on Cofield and Company, and this goes back to I think it was a last place penalty in a fantasy football league where the loser had to go to Waffle House and eat 24 waffles in a 24-hour period. And the guy tapped out at like 5, to which my response was that, well, first of all, that's absurd. You could stay longer and eat more waffles. But my other thing was the Waffle House waffles are really easy to eat. They're not thick. And then Adam Hill came back and he's like, oh, no, they're pretty big. And I'm like, I can eat those. I mean, like, they're light waffles. What are you talking? I mean, if you put chocolate chips on it, yeah. But what do you think of the waffle?
Yeah, so I only had like one bite of it because I was eating my own thing because that was my daughter's.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was good. It was a nice, it wasn't the best waffle I've ever had, but yeah, I mean, it was. But
it's not like a Belgian waffle at some places it's ridiculous. Well, this is like a little thin waffle. You could eat a ton of those.
The version I had heard of that, because I was reading up on the Waffle House, and the version I had heard of that challenge was you just have to stay at the Waffle House for 24 hours, but you can reduce your time for
that's what it was. Every waffle, you're right. Yeah. It wasn't 24. Every waffle you ate knocked an hour off.
Right. And this one guy, the article I read, he tapped out after he got 4.5 down, and then he was a total wuss about it.
Give me a break. Now, if you made, I'm looking at your biscuits and gravy. If you're gonna make me, like do that, I got to eat an order of biscuits and gravy. I got no shot. That's heavy. That's heavy. Waffles are light as hell.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd go back. I will go back again now because we have one down south by us on Parker Road. Actually, by Watkins. Well, sort of. Watkins' brother lives in Parker, but he lives way out. I'm assuming he has a mansion, but he lives way out in the boonies in Parker. But there's one in Parker where his brother lives, and then there's one way up north where the daughter's boyfriend lives.
I'm doing some research on one of my next road trips for UNLV, and there actually are 2 Waffle Houses in Albuquerque.
Okay, yeah, definitely go. Well, I bet you know what I guarantee you what they have there is green chili.
At the Waffle House?
Oh, I guarantee you they have green chili at the Waffle House.
How insulted would people be in Albuquerque if I'm like, man, this is the best green chili I've had in Albuquerque the whole time?
They would kill you. You would not make it out of the pit, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I've got trips coming up to check that. Yeah, Boise this week, Fresno, Reno, Albuquerque. I mean, these are some of the beautiful places in this country. I actually enjoy all of them. I was trying to grind someone's gears. Is there a Waffle House in Boise? Let's see. Hello, there's 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah. I was trying to grind someone's gears because 2 guys were arguing about Logan, Utah, and Laramie, Wyoming. You know how it works in the Mountain West Conference, and in Colorado we've got Fort Collins and Colorado Springs. So, and someone was trying to push Logan, Utah, and that is, for me, that's a rough place.
Why?
It's just boring, and there's almost no bars. They finally opened a new bar, and they got rid of the stupid 3.2 ABV. So it was better this time around, but
well, you know what you got to look for is Shoney's.
I love Shoney's.
Yeah,
love
it. They're very rare.
Now Shoney's devotee. The Shoney's breakfast buffet was one of the staples as a teenager and a young 20-something when I would travel. Loved it. And I do have to say, I still have not discovered. So I'm trying to think, geographic wise, from where you are. I don't know exactly where you are in Denver, but from Denver, Fort Collins north, Colorado Springs south.
Yes.
I still haven't hit the sweet spot in Colorado Springs yet. Like the hours I've been there, or the weather. Like I really haven't had a chance to kind of go to whatever the downtown kind of Main Street area is, where there might be some cool bars and restaurants.
Well, you got to go to Rudy's, even though it's a chain from Texas. You got to get
the barbecue place. I thought there was a barbecue place that everyone like.
Rudy's.
Well, I mentioned, and then bunch of people, like a bunch of your followers, were like, no good. I'm like, well, okay.
Well, they're wrong. So sorry.
Rudy's, okay.
Rudy's is good.
Right.
Yeah, it's
probably
real good.
If I still have the job, probably next year for basketball.
Yeah.
When they go up there.
Real quick before we get out of here, because it's a legal podcast, we got to talk about the dog. The dog
Dude,
knocking.
I don't know if you want to do this. This story is just I don't know. So you went and got another dog,
Right?
and it appears the dog has already been destructive. The new one.
Well, so we have this judge who takes the virtual court more serious than any other judge I've ever seen. He literally makes you put on a suit and tie to go on virtual court like this, right? And so I wear these headsets for the court just because it helps with quality and things like that. So I actually did the newscaster thing where because I had to get out of the house or the set. So I got the jeans on underneath, but business up top with the suit and the top, the jacket and this and that. So I'm doing this. It's supposed to be about a 5-minute hearing, but that's the only hearing going on. There's no other. So it's just us, like, 'cause a lot of these hearings, there's all sorts of cases going on and everything else. It's just us, right? So boom, I'm going to pop in, I'm going to pop out. I pop in and the judge says, "Hey, Mr. Jacobs, I like your headsets," right? And he goes on about how when he first started doing them, he had his own headsets and he looked like a jet fighter pilot, whatever. I'm like, "Hey, that's great." The puppy at this point starts chewing on the headset. And I go, "Oh, Your Honor, it looks like my puppy's chewing on the headset." And then he yanks out the headset out of the computer, which then causes my WebEx. The court uses WebEx. It goes haywire. And I don't know why, if it's just my WebEx or if it's like with all of it, but if you disconnect the headset, it disconnects the audio for the software for WebEx. So I'm like, "Oh crap." So I reboot, and now everybody, the prosecutor, all the client, everybody's waiting on me. So I'm like, crap. I reboot, I come in, it's still not working, but there's a connect audio button that doesn't work. I reboot again, it still doesn't work. So then I call, there's like, for all the idiots that can't figure out like virtual court, I got to call in like those guys. I'm like, oh, I'm pissed, I'm embarrassed, I'm like, damn it, these dogs. So I felt much shame, like, a hockey player in the penalty box. I had to do that.
I could not deal with dogs destroying stuff. My cats are enough of a problem, but these rambunctious dogs, no thanks.
Yeah. So I literally got kicked out of court. I was like, and so I come back and he's like, "Well, Mr. Jacobs, unfortunately, I'm not one of those judges that gets upset over technical issues."
Okay. You're a clown, but I will tolerate it.
I said, "Your Honor, we literally have an issue of the dog eating my homework. In this case, my headset."
Cameron Fletcher has your back on WebEx.
Yes. Is that what he says? Yeah, it's trash.
Trash.
So.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you watching tonight. Dan, I will talk to you soon. Thanks for doing it.
Yep.
We'll see you later. That's all I got to say. No, actually, you know what? I will mention we do have some cool remotes coming up for ESPN Las Vegas. UNLV's playing on Friday night. As I mentioned, I'm going to be in Boise for the game. It's an 8:00 start. Tyler Bischoff's going to be at PT's Pub, the one on Trop near Maryland, actually pretty close to where. Dan, did you work in the Swenson office for Sports Fan Radio Network? That was Trop and Swenson. There was a Filipitos right there. Mexican restaurant.
I don't know about Filipitos, but yes, it was a Trop and Swenson.
Yeah. So this bar, PT's, is right up the road. It's right by the Thomas and Mack. So they'll have $10 pitchers.
Yeah, I remember PT's. Yeah,
PT's Pub, yeah. They'll have $10 pitchers and Tyler.
Would you call it Filipitos?
There's a Mexican place called Filipitos, like 2 buildings from where that Swenson office was. So for people in Vegas, it's right across from the Mexican tire joint and Crown and Anchor. So I'm getting a little hardcore on the directions. I'm talking about Filipitos. Because of course, there's a Vaughn's Market right by the PTs. So we're getting hardcore on the directions. So we got that going on, and then Oyo, they're gonna have a pre-Super Bowl party. It's Bischoff again. That's 2 to 4 on Saturday. So go check that out. And I think Jared Justice will be in Henderson, right on Eastern at Twin Peaks for a pre-Super Bowl party. That'll be 11A to 1P. So I do my best.
Scenic views.
Oh, you nailed it. Yeah, the scenic views and the beer, 29 degrees. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Although you just missed out on National Soup Month. That was the big pitch. Aside from the women, aside from the ladies. I don't know. That's a copy I got. They're like, National Soup Month at Twin Peaks. Get the brisket chili. Get the, well, I love soup. Get the brisket chili. So there you go. PTs, Twin Peaks, Oyo will be all over the place on Friday and Saturday. So come out and see the great personalities of ESPN.